Nancy Pelosi could be in a lot of trouble for the alleged cover up of J6. In other words, I'm getting to the Capitol Hill police, because we've learned that President Trump had asked repeatedly for the Capitol Hill police, and he never got them. And you got to ask yourself, now, why was that? And why was it that the only journalist that happened to be there, and you can't even call her a journalist, again, she was a documentary filmmaker, Alexandra Pelosi, the daughter of course, one Nancy Pelosi. She just happens to be there with mommy on that day, running around with her little video camera, taking all kinds of footage that she eventually, I don't know if she sold to CNN. That would really make it bad, right? And just make a pretty penny off the whole thing too. But she was apparently doing this documentary for HBO. So Nancy knows days in advance that all of this is going to happen. And instead of calling the Capitol Hill police, she calls in Alexandra, her daughter, the documentary filmmaker. So this has come up over and over again. In fact, she was just approached by an independent reporter on the street the other day, and boy, oh boy, did she lose it. I mean, she really lost it. Watch.
Congresswoman Pelosi, are you at all concerned that the new January 6th committee will find you liable for that day? Are you at all concerned about the new January 6th committee finding you liable for that day? Why did you refuse the National Guard on January 6th?
Shut up. I did not refuse the National Guard. The president didn't send it. Why are you coming here with Republican talking points as if you're a serious journalist?
The American people want to know. We still have questions. Thank you.
Whoa. Okay. So just to back up, it's not really a Republican talking point. It's actually something that has been reported on extensively. In fact, let's go back to, I don't know. Let's go back to some of the tweets of Chief Stephen's son. She said Donald Trump delayed deploying the National Guard on January 6th when our Capitol was under violent attack and lives were at stake. Now he's activating the D.C. Guard to distract from his incompetent mishandling of terrorists, healthcare, education, and immigration, just to name a few. She put that out this summer. He actually cleaned up D.C. pretty darn fast, too. So she's still sticking with this story that somehow he was delaying the National Guard. And what do you know? You get Chief Stephen's son, who was running the joint at the time, saying, ma'am, it is long past time to be honest with the American people. On January 3rd, I requested National Guard assistance, but your sergeant of arms denied it. Under federal law, 2 USC 1970, I was prohibited from calling them in without specific approval. I mean, that same day, he writes, Carol Corbin at the Pentagon office, National Guard support. We learned that, but I was forced to decline because I lacked the legal authority. On January 6th, when the Capitol was under attack, and despite my repeated calls, your Sergeant of Arms, again, denied my urgent request for over 70 agonizing minutes, running it up the chain for your approval. When I needed assistance, it was denied. When it suited you, you ordered fencing topped with a wire and surrounded the Capitol with thousands of armed National Guard troops. So in other words, he's calling her total BS on this. Is it a Republican talking point? For goodness sakes, we've now since learned through some of the reporting by Molly Hemingway over at the Federalist that Liz Cheney and the January 6th committee altogether were suppressing the evidence that would have exonerated Donald Trump because he had been pushing for the National Guard and he couldn't get it because of all these protocols. And Nancy knows it. Nancy knows it. And we know she knows it because you see, some of that footage got leaked. I don't know how Alexandra let this one go by, but some of that footage got leaked rather recently. And we found out that Nancy was in a car after all this was going down and was like furious with staff that they hadn't done more. Listen to this.
We have responsibility, Terry. We did not have any accountability for what was going on there, and we should have. This is ridiculous. You're going to ask me in the middle of the thing when they've already breached the inaugural stuff that should we call the Capitol Police? I mean the National Guard? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
They thought that they had sufficient resources.
That is not a question of how they had. They don't know. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility for not having them just prepare for more.
I take responsibility. I did hear that, right? They should have had more. They should have done more. And yet she has the audacity to just last week tell that reporter, oh, you're nothing but a Republican talking point machine. Let's just get to the truth, for goodness sakes, okay? You didn't do your job. Maybe it was negligence. Maybe you had no idea that this was going to be as bad as it was. Or maybe you seized the opportunity. Again, I go back to the peculiar thing that you just called in one journalist, your daughter. And again, she's not a journalist. Filmmaker, okay? Trust me, there's a difference, okay? There really is. You're a documentary filmmaker. It is completely different than being a journalist. She has a narrative that she's trying to tell, and she uses music and fancy things to try and lead you down this super scary thing. And that's what we saw over and over and over again on CNN, almost as though it was theirs. I mean, at times you would think CNN was there inside the Capitol building, not Alexandra Pelosi, daughter of the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, who didn't call in the National Guard when the chain of command said she was supposed to be the one responsible. And this came up in hearings, don't forget. Ted Cruz asking Cash Patel about that day. Let's go to it.
What were you doing on that day?
On that day specifically, responding to preparing to mobilize and deploy the National Guard once we got the lawful request from the local governing authority, which was the mayor of D.C. and the Speaker of the House.
Now, how many days in advance were you working to prepare the Department of Defense to help secure the Capitol on January 6th?
Days in advance, Senator, we were in the Oval Office on an unrelated national security matter with the President of the United States, the Secretary of Defense, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and myself. And the president authorized up to 20,000 plus National Guardsmen and women to secure any security measures necessary related to the Capitol. So we were moving to the fullest extent of the law before the requisite request came from a local governing authority days ahead of time.
And while you were chief of staff at DOD, how many times did DOD approach Capitol Police and ask if they needed National Guard assistance?
I believe those letters are well documented, numerous instances, and numerous of those instances, those requests were shut down.
Now, am I correct that the Capitol Sergeant at Arms said assistance was unnecessary?
That's correct, Senator.
Who did the Sergeant at Arms report to?
The Speaker of the House.
That would have been Nancy Pelosi at the time. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator.
And would that also be Chuck Schumer, then the Senate Majority Leader?
The Sergeant at Arms, yes, Senator, reports up there.
Did Mayor Bowser, the Democrat elected mayor in D.C., either request or allow National Guard assistance?
She put in writing on the days leading up to January 6th a declination for National Guard additional support. And that letter is available publicly to the world.
So, just to speak English for folks at home, a declination meant she said no, don't send National Guard. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you a simple question, because from the questioning from my Democrat colleagues, they might think otherwise. Do you condemn violence against law enforcement?
All of it.
Folks, I'm not funded by any big corporations or anybody. I am funded by viewers.
I like how Alex gets his little commercial in there. Courtesy to him, because he actually pulled that clip, Alex. But you understand, like, how serious this is, right? Because Nancy Pelosi was willing to just throw the entire blame on one Donald Trump, on the MAGA movement, completely exonerate her own self from any responsibility that she should have had. I remember saying at the time, like, I don't get it. Like, why isn't she calling the Capitol Hill police? Like, why didn't she? Why did they wait so long? Why would you allow this thing to get so out of control? I think it's a fair question. And I think, guys, the answer actually is because they recognized it as an opportunity. And these are opportunists after all. I mean, they're a bunch of politicians, for goodness sakes. And you know what politicians do. They look for their edge. And they felt that they had their edge. So if they could somehow prove that Donald Trump was trying to take over the government, then they could squash the MAGA movement forever. Right? And in fact, isn't that indeed what they tried to do? I mean, when you think of the cancel culture that happened, following that, And everything kept going back to, well, we're doing this because of J6, because we cannot allow anything like this to ever happen again. Even though if you really dig down into it, what you might have seen is that there was a failure in part on behalf of the Democrats themselves. And the media was complicit in it. Totally, utterly complicit in all of it. And then what came of this? Think about it. What came of this? What came of this was this whole J6 investigation, this whole J6 committee. They ran with Alexander Pelosi's footage, daughter of Nancy, and they played it in prime time. And they went out and they hired a bunch of ABC News producers, very proud of themselves because they said, oh, this story is so important. We need to make sure it's very, very accessible to the average American public. And they ran with this, and then they initiated a series of investigations, and they had Jack Smith trying to go after the president for all of this.